for fees must fall students. Now, the activists there say that this matter is set to top the agenda at the University South Africa's board meeting this week. The organisation represents public universities across the country. Now, the fees must fall protest in both 2015 and 2016 saw a number of students expelled from their institutions and some arrested. SABC News reporter Sipho Stuurman compiled this report.
Fall protests, both in 2015 and 2016, ushered free higher education for the country's poor. But for some of the student activists, free education came at a heavy price. One student is serving a 5-year prison sentence for banning a police vehicle in 2016. While other students are still making court appearances, University of Pretoria psychology graduate Razira Setaba faces 4 charges, including incitement for illegal activities and public violence.
It's constantly at the back of my head. When I think of applying for a particular scholarship to continue my studies, when I'm thinking of applying to a certain university, this thing is hanging because I always have to disclose it, and you almost feel that both corporate and academia kind of have this keep far away from these ones.
Following on Youth Day calls by the EFF, Rasetaba says President Ramaphosa should pardon fees must fall student activists. Sipho, Stuurman, SABC News, Pretoria.
And now to continue this discussion, we're joined by Fasiha Hassan, who is Deputy Secretary General of the South African Union of Students. Fasiha, welcome. It's been a while, but it's good to see you again. And
good morning.
You look good. Does this mean that things are progressing well?
Look, I think we're in a situation where there's been some announcement on free education. We're now working around policy issues. But we can't leave behind the impact and the effects of fees must fall. And one of those very big impacts is the real one for students. Majority of whom that I speak about actually have charges to their name, are undergoing either university disciplinary process or even within the NPA. And that's something that we need to problematize now. We need to understand it in the context in which it happened, but also not leave them behind now that there's some movement in the process of free education.
As we speak right now, how many students are incarcerated or attending trial?
Look, it's a difficult question to answer. What we're actually doing right now is we're compiling that information. So we've put out a national call. If you know someone or if you are someone who is involved in fees must fall or student activism protests and you were charged, please also contact us. That's all of our social media. But I can't sit here without mentioning the situation of Comrade Kanya Sitreshe, who is at this very moment incarcerated in prison. And he's one of the big cases that we've taken on. In 2016, he was very involved in the protests in Braamfontein at Wits University, and he currently is serving a prison sentence as we speak.
Fasiha, as I understand Kanya's case, he was convicted of arson, setting alight a police vehicle. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
So it's a difficult situation in that he was ill-advised legally to plead guilty, and there have been some issues. So we're actually in the process of appealing the sentence and the conviction. So that process is working. I don't want to speak too early on the matter. So as much as one may say there's a conviction, I think there's a lot more to the context, and we are in the process of an appeal, and we wouldn't appeal if we didn't think that there was seriously a merited case here.
One of the other high-profile cases involves Bonginkosi Kanyile in Durban. So what is the story there? Because, you know, there were many stories. At first, he was arrested as a result of the student protest. But then we heard that there was an outstanding warrant for his arrest, which is why he was denied bail. So what exactly is the story?
I think there's some nuances around Comrade Bonginkosi's case, and he should speak on it himself. I don't want to give out personal information there. But it is definitely also, like you said, a very high-profile case. We're also looking at that case of Mcebo Dlamini, who is currently undergoing trial. So as much as we've highlighted 3 or 4 names, this merely represents a group of much larger students who, as it stands, may not be able to have a discussion or their name being said. But what we are doing, and this is the more important part, is we're trying to work with the authorities. So we're trying to work with both the NPA and the Ministry of Correctional Services and Justice, not only to compile those lists, but to actually rank and understand which which offences have been committed and which haven't, and which are the ones in which we can actually drop the charges. That's actually what the focus of this sort of newer campaign is about. There's also calls for presidential pardon, for President Ramaphosa to understand that students didn't take to the streets because we're criminals. We didn't take to the streets because it's fun. We did so out of necessity, out of a need for free education. So one can't look at this as a purely right or wrong, purely illegal and illegal situation. It's far more nuanced than that, and that's the real point that we're trying to get across.
It's going to be interesting to see how this is going to be considered by the universities of South Africa and, of course, by President Cyril Ramaphosa. Fasiha Hassan, thanks so much for stopping by. We're going to go now to an ad break, and when we come back, we'll wrap it all up.